The last thing Marcus Chen saw before his phone died was his own terrified face reflected in the screen. Behind him, just out of focus, stood something impossible. Something that shouldn't exist. The blurry photos on his cracked phone would either make him famous or destroy everything he'd built. 3 hours ago, he'd been hunting for views. Now he was running for his life. Marcus had never expected to become a paranormal investigator. 6 months earlier, he was just another tech worker burned out from endless video calls and code reviews. But when his ghost hunting channel, Spectral Squad, hit 200,000 subscribers, everything changed. The ad revenue from their haunted asylum videos paid more than his old programming job ever did. The team was simple but effective. Marcus handled the technical side, cameras, and editing. Jake Morrison brought the muscle and skeptical commentary that viewers loved. Sarah Kim provided the research and historical context. Emma Torres was their wild card, always pushing them to go further, take bigger risks. Together, they'd explored supposedly haunted locations across 3 states, debunking some phenomena while capturing others that defied explanation. But ghost hunting was becoming oversaturated. Every week brought new channels, new teams exploring the same tired locations. Their view counts had plateaued and the comments sections filled with demands for fresh content. That's when Emma suggested the pivot to cryptozoology. The disappearance of David Kellerman in Olympic National Park provided the perfect opportunity. The 26-year-old experienced hiker had vanished 3 days into what should have been a routine solo trek. Search and rescue teams found no trace beyond his abandoned campsite. Local forums buzzed with speculation about unusual sounds heard in the forest that week. Strange howls that didn't match any known wildlife. The story had everything their audience craved: mystery, danger, and the possibility of encountering something legendary. Marcus checked his equipment one final time as their rented Jeep bounced along the Forest Service road. 4 cameras, backup batteries, satellite communicator, and his streaming setup that could broadcast live even in remote areas. The technology represented years of channel profits invested back into better gear. "Chat is going crazy already," Sarah announced, monitoring their live stream on her tablet. 15,000 viewers, and we haven't even reached the trailhead yet. Jake adjusted his hiking pack, skepticism written across his weathered features. "Still think we're wasting our time. Guy probably just got lost or injured. Happens all the time out here." "That's what makes it perfect," Emma replied, her eyes bright with excitement. "If we find him safe, we're heroes who helped with the rescue. If we find something else, we make history." The Jeep reached the end of the accessible road just as afternoon shadows began lengthening. Marcus set up the main camera while Sarah consulted her research notes. According to park records, Kellerman had planned to hike the Enchanted Valley Trail before branching off onto less maintained paths. His last known location was approximately 8 miles into the wilderness. "All right, Spectral Squad," Marcus addressed the camera, falling into his practiced presenter voice. "We're about to begin our first cryptozoological investigation. David Kellerman vanished in this forest 3 days ago, and we're going to retrace his route. If there's something unusual in these woods, something that might explain his disappearance, we're going to find it." The trail started innocently enough. Well-maintained switchbacks wound through towering Douglas firs and western hemlocks. Marcus kept one camera rolling continuously while the others documented their progress from multiple angles. The live chat scrolled past with excited speculation and encouragement from their global audience. 2 hours in, they reached Kellerman's abandoned campsite. Park rangers had left it undisturbed pending the ongoing investigation, marking the area with yellow tape. The scene looked wrong immediately. Not just abandoned, but fled from in haste. Sarah knelt beside the scattered gear while Emma filmed her examination. "This doesn't look like someone who planned to leave," she observed. Food still out, sleeping bag half unzipped, boots left behind. Who leaves their boots? Jake examined the ground around the campsite perimeter. Years of construction work had taught him to read disturbed earth, and something about the soil patterns bothered him. There were other things here, big things. Look at these depressions. Marcus focused his camera on the marks Jake indicated. Even to his untrained eye, they looked like massive footprints. Far larger than any human could make, pressed deep into the forest floor. The live viewer count had climbed to over 20,000, and donations poured in as people shared the stream. Could be bear tracks, Jake said, though his voice carried uncertainty. Black bears get pretty big around here. Emma shook her head as she measured one of the clearest impressions. I've seen bear tracks. These are different. Look at the spacing, the depth. Whatever made these was walking upright. As daylight faded, they established their own camp a quarter-mile from Kellerman's site. Marcus rigged battery-powered lights for the cameras while the others prepared dinner. The forest seemed to press closer as darkness fell, filled with sounds that felt almost but not quite familiar. Viewer count just hit 25,000, Sarah reported excitedly. This is already our biggest live stream ever. They took turns monitoring the cameras through the night, but dawn brought only normal forest sounds and unproductive footage. After a quick breakfast, they decided to follow what appeared to be a trail leading away from Kellerman's camp. Not a human trail, but a path of disturbed vegetation and broken branches leading deeper into the wilderness. The second day's hike proved more challenging. The unofficial trail wound through dense underbrush and over steep terrain that forced them to help each other navigate obstacles. Marcus's equipment added extra weight that left him struggling to keep pace, but the stream remained live, powered by his portable battery array. They found the first piece of Kellerman's gear around noon. His water filter dropped beside a stream and partially buried under fallen leaves. Then his compass cracked and abandoned on a game trail. Each discovery felt deliberate, like breadcrumbs leading them deeper into the forest. Why would he abandon this stuff? Emma wondered aloud, examining the damaged compass. An experienced hiker doesn't just throw away essential gear. Unless he was running, Jake replied grimly. Running from something that scared him more than being lost without equipment. The terrain grew wilder as they climbed higher into the mountains. Old-growth forest blocked most sunlight, creating a perpetual twilight beneath the canopy. Marcus noticed his cell signal had vanished hours ago, but the satellite uplink kept their stream broadcasting to an audience that had grown to over 30,000 viewers. Late afternoon brought them to a small clearing where they discovered Kellerman's backpack. Unlike his other gear, this hadn't been abandoned carelessly. Deep claw marks scored the fabric, and the frame was twisted as if something incredibly strong had tried to tear it apart. Sarah's hands shook as she filmed the damage. Guys, I don't think we should be here. Whatever did this to his pack, it's probably still around. Emma examined the claw marks with growing excitement. This is it. This is proof. No known animal in this region could make marks like these. We're dealing with something undocumented. Jake remained focused on practical concerns. We should call this in to the rangers. Let search and rescue know what we found. Marcus tried the satellite communicator, but the device couldn't establish a connection under the thick forest canopy. They were truly isolated now, dependent on the satellite uplink that kept their stream broadcasting but couldn't send two-way communications. As they debated their next move, a sound echoed through the forest that made everyone freeze. Not quite a howl, not quite a roar, but something that combined elements of both. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere, reverberating off the trees until its source became impossible to pinpoint. Did everyone hear that? Marcus whispered to the camera, his professional demeanor cracking slightly. Chat, Please tell me you heard that through the stream." The sound came again, closer this time, and definitely uphill from their position. Something large was moving through the forest, breaking branches and displacing rocks as it traveled. The team huddled together in the clearing, cameras rolling as the sound circled their position. Emma was the first to spot movement in the tree line. "There!" she hissed, pointing toward a gap between massive fir trunks. "Something's watching us." Marcus swung his camera toward the indicated spot but saw only shadows and vegetation. The live chat exploded with viewers claiming they'd seen a dark shape moving between the trees, but the compressed video quality made confirmation impossible. The circling movement continued for nearly an hour while they remained frozen in the clearing. Whatever stalked them seemed intelligent, patient, studying them from multiple angles before making any decision. The prolonged tension was unlike anything they'd experienced in supposedly haunted locations. As sunset approached, the sound suddenly stopped. The forest fell unnaturally quiet, with none of the normal evening sounds of birds settling or small animals moving through the underbrush. Even the wind seemed to pause, leaving them in absolute silence. "We need to move," Jake said finally. "Can't stay exposed in this clearing after dark." They gathered their equipment and began hiking toward higher ground, hoping to find a defensive position among the rocks they'd seen jutting from the mountainside. The viewer count had climbed past 40,000, making this their most successful broadcast ever. But Marcus found it hard to celebrate while fear gnawed at his stomach. The attack came without warning as they climbed a steep slope between towering trees. Something massive crashed through the forest canopy above them, sending broken branches raining down. Marcus glimpsed a dark shape swinging between the trees with impossible agility before it vanished back into the canopy. "Move, move, move!" Jake shouted, pushing them up the slope as more crashing sounds erupted from the trees around them. Whatever pursued them was fast, agile, and seemed to be herding them towards some specific destination. Sarah stumbled and nearly fell, saved only by Emma grabbing her arm and hauling her forward. Marcus struggled with his camera gear, torn between documenting what was happening and simply surviving. The live stream showed chaotic footage of forest floor and sky as he ran. They burst out of the tree line onto a rocky outcrop just as something roared behind them. Not the ambiguous sound from earlier, but a full-throated bellow that seemed to shake the mountainside. Marcus spun around, camera raised, trying to capture whatever emerged from the forest. That's when he saw it. Standing at the edge of the tree line, partially illuminated by the last rays of sunset, was something that shouldn't exist. 8 feet tall at least, covered in dark hair with proportions that were almost but not quite human. Its arms hung longer than any person's, ending in hands that looked capable of tearing apart trees. But the eyes were what froze Marcus in place, intelligent eyes that studied them with obvious curiosity and perhaps recognition. For 3 seconds that felt like hours, human and creature regarded each other across the rocky clearing. Marcus's camera captured every detail as his hands trembled with adrenaline and terror. The creature's face showed expressions that seemed disturbingly familiar, as if it was deciding what to do about these strange intruders in its territory. Then it stepped forward and the spell broke. "Run!" Emma screamed, though they were already moving. The rocky outcrop led to a narrow ridge that promised escape if they could traverse it before the creature decided to pursue. Marcus clutched his camera and phone, knowing that the footage he'd just captured would change everything if he survived to share it. Behind them, the creature let out another roar, but this one sounded different. Less aggressive, more like a warning or territorial display. When Marcus risked a glance back, it had vanished back into the forest, leaving only broken branches to mark its presence. They ran along the ridge until exhaustion forced them to stop. Marcus's satellite uplink had maintained the connection throughout their flight, broadcasting their terror to an audience that had grown to over 50,000 concurrent viewers. The chat scrolled too fast to read, filled with excitement, disbelief, and demands for clearer footage. "Did we get it?" Sarah gasped, collapsing against a boulder. "Please tell me the cameras were rolling." Marcus checked his equipment with shaking hands. The main camera had captured everything, though the footage was shaky and partially obscured by their panicked retreat. His phone had managed 2 clear shots before he'd started running, including one that clearly showed the creature's face and upper body, but as he tried to review the images, his phone battery died. The main camera battery was nearly depleted as well, and they were still miles from their vehicle with an unknown creature somewhere in the forest behind them. "We need to keep moving," Jake said, his practical nature overriding amazement at what they'd witnessed. "That thing knows these woods better than we do. Our only advantage is reaching the road before it decides we're a threat." They began a careful descent through the darkness, using their remaining battery power sparingly for navigation. The forest around them had returned to normal sounds, suggesting the creature wasn't actively pursuing them, but every shadow seemed to hide potential danger. The hike back to their vehicle took 6 hours of careful navigation through terrain that looked completely different in darkness. Marcus's equipment felt heavier with each step, but he refused to abandon gear that contained the footage of a lifetime. Even if the creature footage was ambiguous, the abandoned campsite and damaged equipment provided compelling evidence of something unusual in the forest. They reached their jeep just as dawn broke over the mountains. Marcus immediately plugged his phone into the vehicle's charging system, desperate to review the photos he'd captured during those crucial seconds of the encounter. The main camera battery was completely dead, but his portable backup drives had automatically saved all the footage. As his phone powered up, notifications flooded the screen. Their live stream had reached nearly 70,000 concurrent viewers before the signal finally cut out during their descent. Social media exploded with clips and screenshots from the broadcast. News outlets were already calling, wanting interviews about their alleged Bigfoot encounter. But when Marcus tried to open the photos from the encounter, his heart sank. The first image showed only dark forest with an indistinct shadow that could be anything. The second was better, clearly showing something large and humanoid among the trees. But the lighting and camera compression made details impossible to confirm. "It's not enough," he said, showing the images to his team. "It's compelling, but it's exactly the kind of blurry, ambiguous footage that skeptics always dismiss. We had perfect conditions for 3 seconds, and this is what we got." Emma examined the photos on the phone's small screen, frustrated by their limitations. The viewers saw it live. 50,000 people watched that thing step out of the forest. That has to count for something. "Live stream compression makes everything look fake," Sarah pointed out. "People will say we staged it with a guy in a costume. Without crystal clear footage, we're just another hoax story." Jake started the jeep, eager to put distance between them and the forest. "Maybe that's for the best. Whatever that thing was, it didn't attack us. Could have easily caught us on that ridge, but it let us go. Maybe it deserves to keep its privacy." As they drove towards cell phone coverage and civilization, Marcus wrestled with conflicting emotions. They'd achieved their goal of creating compelling content that would drive subscriber growth and ad revenue. The live stream alone had probably earned them more money than their previous 3 months combined. But the encounter itself left him profoundly changed. The creature's eyes haunted him. There had been intelligence there, awareness, maybe even sadness. It hadn't been the mindless monster that popular culture depicted, but something closer to a person. Someone who just wanted to be left alone in the deep forest. Their phones exploded with notifications as they reached cell coverage. Interview requests from major news networks, offers from documentary producers, and messages from cryptozoology researchers around the world. The blurry photos and live stream footage had already gone viral, shared millions of times across social platforms. But Marcus found himself reluctant to capitalize on their discovery. During their 3 days in the forest, something fundamental had shifted in his perspective. The creature they'd encountered wasn't a source of entertainment or a path to internet fame. It was a living being with its own rights to privacy and safety. "We need to decide what to do with this," he said as they reached the highway. "We could milk this story for months, maybe years. Book deals, speaking tours, documentary appearances. This footage could set us up for life." Emma nodded enthusiastically. "It's everything we hoped for and more. We're about to become the most famous cryptozoology investigators in the world." Sarah seemed more conflicted. "But what about David Kellerman? We never found him. What if he's still out there injured or worse?" Jake's expression remained grim. "That thing we saw, it was territorial, protective of its space. If Kellerman got too close, tried to document it like we did, maybe it decided he was too much of a threat to let go." The implications of Jake's words settled over them like a cold fog. Their encounter had been brief, almost accidental. But Kellerman had been alone in the forest for 3 days. Plenty of time for a territorial creature to decide that a lone human represented a threat to its safety. Marcus made a decision that surprised everyone, including himself. When they reached the ranger station to report their findings, he handed over copies of all their footage, including the clear shots from his phone. The authorities needed to know what was out there, both to aid in the search for Kellerman and to protect future hikers. But he also made another choice. When the inevitable media interviews began, he found himself downplaying their encounter. The live stream footage spoke for itself, but he refused to enhance or clarify the images. He talked about the experience as ambiguous, possibly explainable by known wildlife and stress-induced misperception. His team thought he was crazy. They'd captured evidence of the most famous cryptid in North America, and he was deliberately undermining their credibility. But Marcus had looked into those intelligent eyes and recognized something that demanded respect rather than exploitation. The Spectral Squad channel exploded in popularity following their Olympic National Park investigation. Subscriber count doubled, then tripled as people shared and analyzed their footage frame by frame. They received offers from major streaming platforms, book publishers, and television networks. But Marcus began steering their content in a different direction. Instead of sensationalizing unexplained phenomena, they started focusing on conservation and wilderness protection. They used their platform to highlight the importance of preserving wild spaces and respecting the creatures that called them home. Some viewers complained about the change in focus, demanding more sensational content and clearer proof of cryptid encounters. But others appreciated their more thoughtful approach, and their audience continued growing with people interested in genuine exploration rather than manufactured drama. 6 months later, David Kellerman's remains were found by a hiking group exploring a remote canyon 12 miles from his last known location. The official cause of death was exposure and injuries from a fall, though some of his gear was never recovered. The discovery brought closure to his family but raised new questions about what had driven an experienced hiker so far off his planned route. Marcus never shared his private theory about Kellerman's final days. The creature they'd encountered had been intelligent enough to recognize the difference between genuine threat and accidental intrusion. Perhaps Kellerman's longer presence, his attempts to document and study something that preferred to remain hidden, had crossed a line that brief encounters didn't breach. The blurry photos from that night remained the closest thing to definitive proof that Marcus ever captured. Scientific analysis proved inconclusive, with experts divided between proponents who saw clear evidence of an unknown primate and skeptics who identified shadows, vegetation, and psychological wishful thinking. but Marcus knew what he'd seen. In quiet moments, usually late at night when he was editing footage or responding to viewer comments, he found himself thinking about those intelligent eyes. Somewhere in the deep forests of the Pacific Northwest, something extraordinary continued to live and thrive, protected by the same qualities that made definitive proof so elusive. Their channel continued to grow and evolve, attracting viewers who shared their respect for wilderness mysteries rather than their desire to exploit them. They investigated reports of unusual phenomena around the world, but always with an emphasis on conservation and respect for local communities and wildlife. Marcus kept the original uncompressed footage from their Olympic National Park encounter locked away on secure drives. Someday, he thought, when the world was ready to approach such discoveries with wisdom rather than sensationalism, the full truth might be worth sharing. But for now, the blurry photos and compressed live stream provided just enough evidence to inspire wonder while preserving the privacy of something that had chosen to remain hidden. In the end, their cryptozoology pivot had succeeded beyond their wildest expectations, not just in views and revenue, but in finding a purpose larger than entertainment. They'd touched something genuinely mysterious and chosen to protect it rather than exploit it. That decision, Marcus realized, was the real treasure they'd brought back from the deep forest. The creature was still out there, somewhere in the vast wilderness, living its life away from human interference. And Marcus had played a small part in keeping it safe. That knowledge brought him more satisfaction than any number of views or subscribers ever could. Sometimes, he reflected, the most important discoveries were the ones you chose not to share.